Hey guys, Jason here with RWB NetSec, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at SQLMap and how we can use it to perform SQL injection testing against a web app. So for testing purposes, I'm going to be using the OWASP Broken Web Apps VM and focusing on the Bricks application that it contains. You can download that VM from this link here at SourceForge, and I will put this link in the description below. So if you want to follow along with the video, download this when you get a chance and get it set up in either VirtualBox or VMware. And once you get it set up, you'll just open a browser and go to that VM, to the IP address there, and you'll see this is the main page that's going to come up. And you can see that it contains all these different web apps that you can use for testing. So like I said, you're going to want to go under the training applications section and then just click on OWASP Bricks here. This is the one we're going to be looking at. So when you get on this page, just go up here to this Bricks menu and come down and click on Login Pages, and then click on this Login number 1. This is the page that we're going to be testing against. And you can see that on this page it just has a username and a password field. We're going to take a look and see if either of these fields are vulnerable to SQL injection, and if so, can we use that to gain access to the backend database. So get your VM set up, and let's go ahead and get started with SQLMap. So just to give a brief introduction, SQLMap is a tool that allows you to automate testing for SQL injection flaws. And if it finds them, then you can possibly exploit them. It has quite a few options that you can use, from fingerprinting a database to actually dumping data. And it does all this quite well. It's actually a pretty powerful tool. SQLMap is one of the primary tools used when testing web apps. I think it's probably one of the most popular ones that a pen tester would use. So let's go ahead and launch it. And there's a couple of ways, I guess, that you can do this. You can either go up to Applications, Database Assessment, and then just come down to SQLMap. Or you could just simply open a new terminal window and just type SQLMap from the command line. And if you do a TAC H, you'll get the same information comes up either way. So let's just scroll back up here. So you can see it's actually got quite a few options that you can go through. The basic syntax is just going to be, let me go ahead and set this up the way we normally do. Let's minimize the browser and this text file. Pull this up just a little bit, and I'm going to open another terminal window. And this is how we'll run it. We'll just keep this one up here open, just as a reference for the options that we can use. So the usage is actually pretty simple. From a command line, you would just type in SQLMap. You're going to want to use like a TAC U and then specify the address of the web app that you're going against. So, whatever the address would be. Of course, I'm not going to be testing Google. And then after this, you would put in any of the other options that you want to use with it. We're going to start working through some different examples, and as we work through this, we'll introduce different switches at the command line as we work through it. So since we're going to be using that login page from the Bricks application, let me just pull this up a little bit. Let's just take a look at it real quick. You can see that we've got only two form fields on this page. And if we view the page source, we can see here the form is posting. It's just posting back to itself here, it looks like. And then you've got these input boxes here, which would be the username and the password. And that's the information that we need to give to SQLMap in order for it to be able to test against these fields. So there's actually a couple of ways that you can do this, and the one that we're going to use here is going to be with the tac forms option. So let me delete this Google. Put in the IP address of the VM, and then the link for that is going to be OS Bricks login 1. So we're just basically copying what's here in the URL. And we know that the backend database that's used here is MySQL. So to save some time with enumeration, I'm going to go ahead and just specify that with the tac DBMS option. After that, we're going to use tac forms, and then I'm going to just have it retrieve the banner information for the database. So we'll do a tac banner. So then if we go back and look at this command, of course we're calling SQLMap here. The tacu option is just where you specify the URL that you're going to test against. Tac DBMS lets you specify the backend database. If you don't know what the backend database is, there is another option that you can use, the tac DBS, and that will cause SQLMap to enumerate the database and try to figure out if it's either like a MySQL or a Microsoft backend or maybe Postgres or something like that. So SQLMap will try to figure that out for you. And then you've got the tac forms, and what this is going to do, SQLMap will look at the source code of the page of the website, and it's going to look for that form input and look for the different inputs. So in this case with the Bricks application, it's going to see that username and password input fields, and those are the ones it's going to test against. And then of course just the tac banner option is just going to tell it to try to retrieve the this will actually be the version of the MySQL database that's running on the back end. So this is the one we're going to run. So once you get that typed in, just hit enter, and there will be some questions that SQLMap asks you. So you can see here it's found the form, this post data. So here it's asking if you want to test this form, and we do, so we're going to put a capital Y here and just hit enter. Then it asks if you want to edit the post data. I'm not going to change anything here, just accept the default. Just hit the enter key from here. And then it asks if you want to fill blank fields with random values. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and do that. Just hit Y and enter. And then it asks if you want to exploit this SQL injection. Of course, we want to try that. Just hit a capital Y and hit enter. And right here you can see that it was actually able to retrieve the banner. So the MySQL version is 5.1.41. So it was successful in doing that for us. So now we're going to see if we can get SQLMap to print us out a list of all of the database users that are on this server. So let's just clear the screen here. It's going to be basically the same command, except now we want to change the tac banner to tac users. Leave everything else the same, and then just hit enter here. Of course, again, it's going to ask you those same questions, so we're going to say OK. And yes again. And it has retrieved 38 users. And these are database users for every application on the server, which is good information to have. We could also take this a step further. If we wanted to also get the password hashes for these users, just add tac passwords to your command, leave everything else the same, hit enter there, and just answer the questions each time. I don't want to store them right now. You can tell it to perform a dictionary-based attack. I'm going to go ahead and tell it yes for this one. And I'm just going to let it do the default dictionary file. So we'll just select option 1, which is the default, and then just hit enter. Click no for this password suffixes, because that option is actually pretty slow. I'll hit enter here. And it's going to attempt to crack all of the password hashes that it found. And you can see that it has come back with clear text passwords for these accounts. Of course, obviously they're not very complex passwords, but nonetheless it was still able to find those for us. So now let's move on to actually listing the databases that are available to us on the server. We're going to use the same basic command as before, and this time we're going to introduce another option called TAC-DBS, and that's going to enumerate the server and list out any databases that our session user has access to. So it's going to be the same basic command that we used before, except now just use the TAC-DBS at the end. Hit enter from here, and it's going to ask you these same questions. Now, there is an option in SQLMap that will let it run automatically and basically just accept all of the default answers for each of the questions, but I'm going to leave it like this for now, just so you can get used to the questions that it's asking you. Alright, and it looks like it was able to retrieve all of the databases that are on this particular VM, which is not the normal case, or it shouldn't be normal anyway. If a web app is set up correctly, the user that the database is running as should not have access to every other database on the server. But we know that this OWASP application is intentionally set up to be vulnerable, so that's why we're seeing all these. But just with this security issue, we're going against this BRICS application, but through that, we could probably enumerate every database that's on the server. And some of these databases could contain credit card data, and we're thinking real world scenarios here. If the database that you're going against, which in our case would be BRICS, maybe it doesn't have anything except for a username and a password listing. But if we can dump data from other databases, it's possible that those would contain credit card information or social security numbers, anything like that. So when you're setting up a database and a web app on a live production system, be sure to watch out for the user that you are letting that database run as and the permissions and privileges that user has. So with this video, we're just going to focus on the BRICS database, since this is the page that we're looking at. And the next thing that we need to do is enumerate the tables and columns that database contains. So let me just clear the screen again. If we go back to the command we used, this time we're going to remove this DBS option. We're going to change this to attack capital D, and this lets us specify the database that we're going against. So in this case, it's going to be the BRICS database. And then we want to add in TAC tables. And we're going to tell SQLMap here that we want to find out all of the tables that are contained within the BRICS database. So you'll hit enter there. And again, answer these questions. All right. So it's come back and it says it looks like there's only one table that's in that database, and it just happens to be a users table, which is the one that we would be looking for anyway. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is enumerate the columns that are contained within this users table. So if we go back to our command, let's clear the screen again. And this time we're going to change this tables option here. We're going to change this to a tag capital T, change that to users, which was the table that we found, and now we're going to add a tag columns. Let's see, let me just widen this a little bit so it doesn't wrap around. So you see we've added this tag columns to the end of it. Once you get that typed in, just hit enter there. I'm going to answer our questions again. And now it's come back and shows us these are all of the different columns that are contained within that users table. So we've got email, host, ID users, etc. So now from here we could choose to dump all the information that's here, but we only want the ones that have probably got the best type of data. And we're going to be using, of course, we're going to be going after names and passwords, and I'm going to go ahead and tell it to get the email addresses as well. So if we go back to our command, I'm going to back out columns, and you can see how the command builds each time depending on what type of information you're going after. So now we're going to do a tag capital C, and I want it to see, we're going to do name. And the syntax is just going to be the name of the column that you want, a comma, and then the next column. Make sure you don't put any spaces between them. I'm going to do password and then email. And then after this, we're going to do a tag dump. Let's see, let's make it a little bit wider. I'm just trying to get it all on one line for you guys. So I hope the command is not getting too complicated. I'll just go back over it really quick here. This tag D lets you specify the database that you're going against. Tag T specifies the table name. The tag C then lets you specify the columns that you want to get. And then this tag dump tells SQLMap to extract all of the data from these particular columns. Alright, so from here we'll just hit enter, answer our questions again, and no, I don't want to save those right now. I'm not going to, well, yeah, let's go ahead and let it crack the passwords. Alright, so it's come back already. And you can see that we now have the name, password, and the email for all of the users that are contained within that users table in the Bricks database. So then if I was to then go back to the website, just do admin, log in, successfully logged in. And you can see this actually doesn't do anything. This page doesn't go anywhere. It just lets you do a successful login. And I could also select Tom and Tom. Logged in. So you can see at this point we've got the user data. So during your testing, if you were able to get usernames and passwords, you would go back then to the web app, log into it, and then you would have access to anything that that user has rights to. And if it happens to be an admin user, you could probably do quite a bit of damage with the system that way. So now we could do that for any of the if there were any other tables that existed in this Bricks database, we could pull data from them just the same way that we were able to get the usernames and passwords. But if you remember from just a little bit ago, we were actually able to get a listing of all the databases that are on the server. So what if we wanted to look at one of the other databases? Let's just scroll up to the listing here. We'll just pick one. We'll do the DVWA database. So if I go back, of course I'm going to have to change this. I just wanted to show you how then we could access, since our user has access to all those databases, we can then go back and pull data from those databases as well. So if I go back and change this to the DVWA database, and then go back through the same steps that we did before. Yes. So you can see that with DVWA, it has two tables in it. You've got guest book and users. And you could continue enumerating down, though we could probably, well, we can just go ahead and work through that. We want to get the users again, so we'll do users here, tac columns. Yes, yes. You can see it's giving us back the columns that are contained in that users table, along with the data types for each one. So then if we wanted to come in here and get that column data, let's see, let's just do user and password, and then add our tac dump to it here. So we are getting usernames and password hashes in this particular phase, and then SQLMap will come back and ask if you want to try to crack these passwords. Don't want to store them. I'm not sure how long this will take, so I'll go ahead and let it try, and we'll do the default dictionary again. Click no on this one. And you can see that it's already cracked 4 of them. It's actually going pretty fast. So we've got a list of users and passwords, and here's the clear text password for each one that it was able to get, and it got all of these. So this is just kind of the, I don't know if you would call it basic power, but you can see how you can use SQLMap to actually, pull data from a database just from a simple SQL injection flaw. And starting out, we didn't have to be logged into a web app in order to get that information. You can see that we didn't even try to log into this thing, but there was an issue with this username field, and that allowed us to bypass any authentication required for this web app and get direct access to the backend database. And from that point, then we were able to extract all of this other data. And because the database user is running with root privileges, we had access to every database on this web server. So, think about if you had a web app that was running, maybe 20 different web apps that were running on one server. And one of those web apps has a flaw in it. That one flaw could give an attacker access to all of the other web apps and information on that server, depending on how the user is set up, what the permissions are for it. So that's something to always keep in mind when you're setting these things up. Be sure that you watch the user rights and privileges. So there were a couple of other switches that I just wanted to mention here in this particular video. SQLMap has actually got a ton of different switches and options, and there's no way that I could cover everything in one video. This thing would be 2 or 3 hours long if we just took our time and went through everything on it. But one that I wanted to mention, let me just come back up here and make this easier to read. There's an option called tac level, and with this option, it lets you specify a testing level and it goes from 1 to 5. So I could set it to, let's say we'll set it to level 5, which is the most exhaustive. And what this setting does It causes SQLMap to use a larger number of payloads when testing injection points. So the default level is 1. If you set it to 2 or higher, SQLMap is going to try injection attacks in more than just the get and post parameters that there are for the page. It's going to also look at the user agent and also any cookie values that are being passed to see if it's possible that there may be injection points in those items as well. And you would want to use maybe a higher level if you're working on a web app that you think has got vulnerable injection points, but maybe those are a little bit harder to exploit. Maybe there's some different tweaking and things that you would need to do. So that's why you would set it to a different level. There's also another option called TAC risk, and this goes from 1 to 3. So if I set it to risk 3, which is the highest, this causes SQLMap to use more risky injection techniques. And just a word of caution with this one, if you do set it to a higher level here, you could introduce issues into the database that maybe you didn't intend. If you've got a query that's using an update statement, it's possible that you could, with this risk level set higher, you could end up updating all of the different tables in that database where you didn't mean to. So just use caution if you're going to be using higher risk levels here. And you can look at all of the different payloads and options that SQLMap uses. If you go under User Share SQLMap, and I believe it's under this XML folder here, or not. Let me find it here. Yeah, payloads. You can see these are all XML files, and you can see the different, they're just named based on the types of attacks that they contain. So if we just let's just look at this inline query. You see these are the injection strings that SQLMap uses when it's testing the injection points. And these are customizable. You can actually come in here and add your own injection strings if you've got something custom that you want SQLMap to try. You can just come in, add your own section, just follow the same format that SQLMap is using for this file, and it would just be like this one section here. So you can customize these if you want to. And then the last one that I wanted to show you or talk about is this TAC technique. This option will let you specify which injection type that you want to use. So by default, SQLMap uses all injection types, and when I say injection types, that's going to be things like a Boolean-based injection, error-based, union-based, stacked queries, time-based, blind injections, and inline injections. So by default, SQLMap tries all of those if you don't specify this technique switch. If, say you've maybe done some manual testing on a web app and you find that it's vulnerable to maybe an error-based SQL injection, instead of having SQLMap run all of the different tests, you can specify with this technique switch that you only want it to do error-based attacks. And that will actually save you some time during your testing process. You just focus down on that one specific injection type. So that's actually going to wrap it up for this video. I know we barely scratched the surface on all the capabilities that SQLMap has, but like I said, there's too many options for me to go over everything in one video. I may actually end up breaking it down and adding more videos later that focus on maybe some of the more advanced options that it contains. I would encourage you guys to sit down, pull up the help options, and look at all the switches that are available. SQLMap is a very powerful tool. It gives you a lot of flexibility in the testing that you can do against a web app. So just check it out, sit down, spend some time with it. Like I said, download the Bricks application, or the entire OWASP Broken Web Apps VM. Sit down and play around with it, look at the different injection types that you can work with. And as always, guys, I really appreciate you watching the video. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. And as always, I hope you guys have an awesome day. And the holidays are coming up, so I hope you guys have an awesome holiday time. Spend some time with the family if you get a chance, and just kick back and take it easy. Talk to you later, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If it's your first time here, I would love if you subscribe to the channel and share it out with all of your friends. So my hope is to build a community where we can help each other learn and grow in security, especially if you're just getting into it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And again, thanks for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day. See you guys.